Maya Johnson woke up that Tuesday morning feeling tired but determined. She had a busy day ahead of her. As a federal prosecutor with the U.S. Attorney's Office, her schedule was always packed. Today, however, she needed to handle a personal matter before heading to her office. 3 weeks ago, she received a traffic ticket for allegedly running a yellow light. Maya knew she hadn't done anything wrong. The light was still yellow when she crossed the intersection. She decided to contest the ticket instead of simply paying the fine. Better get this over with quickly, Maya thought as she picked out her clothes. Since she planned to go straight to work afterward, she chose a simple but professional navy blue pantsuit and low heels. She pinned her hair back neatly and applied minimal makeup. The county courthouse was unusually crowded that morning. Maya checked in with the clerk and took a seat in the back row. She opened her phone to review some work emails while waiting for her case to be called. "Traffic court is always a pain," whispered an older woman sitting next to her. "Judge Harmon is on duty today. He's not known for his patience." Maya nodded politely, but didn't engage further. She had appeared before many judges in her career and knew how to present her case respectfully. After nearly an hour of waiting, the clerk finally called her name. "Case number 347B, Maya Johnson, contested traffic violation." Maya walked confidently to the front of the courtroom. She stood at the defendant's table and straightened her posture, ready to explain her side of the story. Judge Richard Harmon barely looked up from his papers. He was a man in his 60s with thinning gray hair and thick glasses. His reputation in the legal community was mixed at best. "Ms. Johnson, you're contesting a traffic violation from February 28th. Is that correct?" His tone was already dismissive. "Yes, Your Honor. I believe there's been a mistake. The light was still yellow when I—" Judge Harmon cut her off with a wave of his hand. "Officer Williams has been with the department for 15 years. Are you suggesting he doesn't know how to do his job?" Maya was taken aback by his tone, but maintained her composure. "Not at all, Your Honor. I'm simply stating what happened from my perspective." The judge looked at her properly for the first time. His eyes narrowed slightly as they moved from her face to her clothes and back again. Something in his expression changed. "Well, your perspective doesn't match the facts in the report," he said, his voice now carrying an edge that wasn't there before. "You people always think the rules don't apply to you." A silence fell over the courtroom. Maya felt her heart rate increase, but her face remained calm. She had faced subtle and not so subtle racism many times before. "Your Honor, with all due respect, I'm simply exercising my right to contest this ticket." Judge Harmon's face hardened. "The fine for your violation is $300, plus $75 in court fees. Next case." Maya was shocked. The standard fine was only $120. She opened her mouth to object but thought better of it. The judge was clearly not interested in hearing her out. As she turned to leave, she noticed Officer Williams at the back of the courtroom looking uncomfortable. Their eyes met briefly, and he quickly looked away. Maya walked out of the courtroom with her head held high, but her mind was racing. What had just happened was not only unfair but possibly illegal. And Judge Harmon had no idea who he had just discriminated against. Maya stood in the hallway outside the courtroom, still processing what had just happened. The unfair fine stung, but the judge's comment about "you people" bothered her more. She took a deep breath and moved to a quiet corner to collect her thoughts. "That was rough in there," a voice said nearby. Maya turned to see an older white woman with kind eyes. She wore a courthouse volunteer badge. "I'm Margaret. I've been observing Judge Harmon's courtroom for 6 months now, for a community watchdog program." The woman kept her voice low. "What happened to you in there? It's not the first time I've seen it." Maya's professional instincts kicked in. "What exactly have you observed?" Margaret looked around carefully before answering. "Different treatment based on skin color. Higher fines, harsher words, less patience. I've been keeping notes." Before they could talk more, Maya's phone buzzed. It was her colleague Carlos from the U.S. Attorney's Office. "Maya, where are you?" "The Simpson case preparation meeting starts in 30 minutes. "I'll be there," Maya replied. "Just wrapping up at traffic court." She didn't mention the incident. She needed time to think. Maya had exchanged contact information with Margaret and hurried to her car. While driving to her office, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She was a federal prosecutor who specialized in civil rights violations. If Judge Harmon was systematically treating people differently based on race, that was a serious issue. At the office, Maya struggled to focus on the Simpson case. Her colleague Carlos noticed her distraction. "Everything okay?" he asked during a break. "You seem somewhere else today." Maya hesitated, then decided to share what happened. Carlos listened carefully, his expression growing more concerned. "That's not good," he said when she finished. "You know, the Justice Department has been looking into potential civil rights issues in the county court system. This could be relevant." "I'm thinking the same thing," Maya nodded. "But I need more than just my experience to make a case." After the meeting, Maya returned to her office and closed the door. She opened her laptop and began searching through public records of Judge Harmon's cases. What she found was disturbing. The data showed clear disparities in how fines were assessed and how defendants were treated based on their apparent race. Maya made a few calls to other attorneys who regularly appeared in Judge Harmon's courtroom. Without revealing her full intentions, she asked about their experiences. 3 out of 4 mentioned seeing different standards applied to different defendants. By late afternoon, Maya had compiled enough preliminary evidence to warrant a deeper look. She was about to call Margaret when her phone rang. It was her supervisor, District Attorney James Wilson. "Maya, got a minute? Something big just landed on my desk, and I need you on it." "Of course," she replied. "What's the case?" "It's not just any case. It's a public corruption investigation involving a local judge. Judge Richard Harmon." Maya nearly dropped her phone. "Judge Harmon? What's the allegation?" "Multiple complaints about discriminatory treatment in his courtroom, plus some financial irregularities. Too much of a pattern to ignore. The chief judge of the district asked us to look into it quietly." Maya's mind raced. This was much bigger than her traffic ticket incident. "I need our best prosecutor on this, Maya. That's you. But if you have any conflicts or reservations..." Maya took a deep breath. "Actually, sir, I think I might have just experienced that discrimination firsthand this morning." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Then, you better come to my office right now. This changes everything." As Maya gathered her notes, she realized that tomorrow she would be facing Judge Harmon again, not as a defendant, but as the federal prosecutor investigating him. The next morning, Maya arrived at the office earlier than usual. She wore her most professional outfit, a sharp charcoal suit with a crisp white blouse. Today, she wasn't just Maya Johnson. Today, she was Assistant United States Attorney Maya Johnson, and she had work to do. District Attorney James Wilson was already waiting for her. His office had a view of the city skyline, but neither of them was interested in the view today. "I pulled the statistics on Judge Harmon's cases from the past 3 years," Wilson said, pushing a folder across his desk. "It's worse than we thought." Maya opened the folder and studied the numbers. Black defendants received fines that were, on average, 40% higher than white defendants for the same offenses. The disparities in sentencing for minor criminal cases were even more shocking. "This is clear evidence of systematic bias," Maya said, her voice calm despite her growing anger. "But we'll need witness statements to strengthen the case." "Already on it," Wilson replied. "Margaret Wells, the court observer you met, has agreed to share her notes. And 3 attorneys who regularly practice in Judge Harmon's court are willing to give statements." Maya nodded. "What about Officer Williams, the one who wrote my ticket?" "We contacted him this morning. He was reluctant at first, but when we showed him the pattern of cases, let's just say he doesn't want to be on the wrong side of this." For the next few hours, Maya interviewed witnesses. Officer Williams admitted that Judge Harmon had sometimes made comments about going harder on certain defendants. 2 court clerks revealed that the judge often used different tones with different defendants based on their race. By lunchtime, Maya had compiled enough evidence to request a formal investigation, but there was still the question of her own involvement. "I'm concerned about a conflict of interest," she told Wilson. "I was directly affected by his actions." Wilson thought for a moment. "Actually, I think we can use that. You have a unique perspective as both a victim and a prosecutor." "What do you mean?" Maya asked. "Judge Harmon has a federal case on his docket tomorrow, the Martinez drug trafficking case. You were already assigned as lead prosecutor. I think you should proceed as planned." Maya raised an eyebrow. "You want me to appear in his courtroom? While we're investigating him? Exactly, Wilson nodded. He doesn't know about the investigation yet, and he certainly doesn't know that the woman he discriminated against yesterday is the federal prosecutor who will be standing in his courtroom tomorrow. Maya thought about it. There was a certain justice to the idea. It could also give us a chance to observe his behavior firsthand, without him knowing he's being watched. Precisely, Wilson agreed. But the decision is yours. I can assign someone else to the Martinez case if you're uncomfortable. Maya didn't hesitate. No, I'll do it. That afternoon, Maya prepared for both cases, the Martinez drug trafficking case and the investigation into Judge Harmon. She reviewed her evidence, practiced her arguments, and steeled herself for what was to come. As she was leaving the office that evening, her phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. More evidence. Judge H made similar comments to another black woman today. Have it on record. Maya's determination grew stronger. What Judge Harmon had done to her wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern of injustice that had gone on too long. At home, Maya carefully selected her outfit for the next day, the same navy blue pantsuit she had worn to traffic court. She wanted Judge Harmon to recognize her. She wanted him to remember the woman he had dismissed and disrespected. Tomorrow would be a day of reckoning, and Maya was ready. The federal courthouse looked imposing against the clear blue morning sky. Maya Johnson arrived 45 minutes early, her case files neatly organized in her leather briefcase. Today was the day Judge Harmon would learn exactly who she was. "Morning, Ms. Johnson," said the security guard at the entrance. "Big case today." "You could say that, Bill," Maya replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She made her way to courtroom 302, where several attorneys were already preparing for the day's proceedings. Maya nodded to the defense attorney for the Martinez case, a competent lawyer named Derek Sandoval. "Ready for battle?" Derek asked casually. "Always," Maya responded, setting her briefcase on the prosecution table. The courtroom gradually filled with people. At 8:55 a.m., the bailiff entered from a side door. "All rise. The United States District Court for the Eastern District is now in session, the Honorable Judge Richard Harmon presiding." Judge Harmon strode in, his black robes flowing behind him. His face showed the confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. He sat down and adjusted his glasses, scanning the courtroom without really seeing it. "You may be seated," he announced. "Let's begin with case number 2025 CR 157, United States v. Martinez." The clerk handed him the case file. "The government is represented by Assistant United States Attorney Maya Johnson." At the mention of her name, Judge Harmon glanced up, his expression neutral. Maya stood confidently. "Good morning, Your Honor. Maya Johnson for the United States." For a moment, there was no reaction. Then Judge Harmon's eyes narrowed slightly as recognition began to dawn. He looked at Maya's face, then at her navy blue suit, the same one she had worn in traffic court. His face paled visibly. "Ms. Johnson," he stammered, clearly thrown off balance. "I will proceed with the arraignment." Maya maintained perfect composure as the proceedings began. She presented the government's charges against Martinez with precision and clarity, all while Judge Harmon struggled to maintain his usual authoritative demeanor. When she finished her presentation, Judge Harmon seemed to have regained some of his composure. "Thank you, Ms. Johnson. The defense may now." Maya interrupted politely. "Your Honor, before the defense presents, there's another matter I need to address." Judge Harmon froze. "What? What matter is that?" "The United States wishes to inform the court that we have opened an investigation into systematic civil rights violations in the county court system." Maya's voice was clear and steady. "As this may potentially create a conflict of interest in certain cases, including this one, I am obligated to disclose this information." The courtroom fell completely silent. Judge Harmon's hands gripped the edge of his bench so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "What exactly are you suggesting, Ms. Johnson?" His voice had lost all its previous authority. "I'm not suggesting anything, Your Honor. I'm merely fulfilling my ethical obligation to inform the court of a potential conflict." Maya's eyes met his directly. "The investigation concerns patterns of disparate treatment based on protected characteristics." Judge Harmon understood perfectly what was happening. His eyes darted around the courtroom, noticing for the first time that District Attorney James Wilson had slipped in and was sitting in the back row. Two FBI agents sat nearby, watching intently. I think we should take a brief recess," Judge Harmon said, his voice strained. "Court will resume in 15 minutes. As he hurried from the bench, Maya calmly gathered her notes. Derek Sandoval leaned over from the defense table. "What just happened?" he whispered. "Justice is what happened," Maya replied quietly. "Or at least, the beginning of it." In the hallway outside, court staff whispered among themselves. News was spreading quickly. Judge Harmon's clerk approached Maya cautiously. "He wants to see you in his chambers," she said. "He seems upset." Maya nodded. "I expected he might, but I won't be meeting him alone." She gestured to District Attorney Wilson and the two FBI agents, who were already walking toward her. "Tell Judge Harmon we'll be there shortly," Maya said. "All of us." Maya walked toward Judge Harmon's chambers with District Attorney Wilson and the two FBI agents following close behind. The courthouse hallway seemed unusually quiet, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Court staff and attorneys stopped to watch them pass, whispering among themselves. "Are you ready for this?" Wilson asked quietly. Maya nodded. "I've been ready since the moment he said 'you people' in that courtroom." The judge's chambers were located at the end of a private corridor. His assistant sat at a desk outside, looking nervous as the group approached. "He's waiting for you," she said, avoiding eye contact. "He asked to speak with Ms. Johnson alone." "That won't be happening," Wilson replied firmly. "We'll all be going in." Without waiting for a response, Maya knocked on the heavy wooden door and entered. Judge Harmon was standing by the window, his back to the door. His judicial robe was draped over a chair, making him look smaller somehow, more ordinary in his gray suit. "Ms. Johnson," he said without turning around. His voice lacked its usual authority. "I didn't expect you to bring an entire delegation." "This isn't a social call, Your Honor," Maya replied calmly. "I believe you understand why we're here." Judge Harmon finally turned to face them. His expression was a mixture of anger and fear. "Is this some kind of revenge for a simple traffic ticket?" he demanded. "Seems rather extreme, don't you think?" District Attorney Wilson stepped forward. "Judge Harmon, this investigation began before Ms. Johnson's experience in your courtroom. Her incident merely confirmed what our data was already showing us." One of the FBI agents placed a thick folder on the judge's desk. "We have documented evidence of racial disparities in your sentencing and fines over the past 3 years. The pattern is unmistakable." Judge Harmon's face flushed red. "This is absurd. I've been on the bench for 17 years. My record speaks for itself." "Yes, it does," Maya said quietly. "That's precisely the problem." She opened another folder and pulled out several sheets of paper. "Yesterday, you fined me $300 plus court costs for a traffic violation that typically carries a $120 fine. Just before my case, you dismissed a similar charge against a white defendant with a warning." "Different circumstances," the judge muttered. "We have dozens of similar examples," Maya continued, "and witnesses who have heard your comments about you people and other concerning statements." Judge Harmon sank into his chair. For a moment, no one spoke. The ticking of the antique clock on his wall seemed unnaturally loud. "What do you want from me?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "First, you'll recuse yourself from the Martinez case and all other federal cases currently on your docket," Wilson stated. "Then you'll take a voluntary leave of absence while the investigation proceeds." "And if I refuse?" The second FBI agent, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. "Then we'll proceed with a public investigation, including executing search warrants for your financial records and private communications." Judge Harmon's face went pale. "You can't do that. You have nothing concrete." "We have enough," Maya said, meeting his eyes directly. "More than enough to open a full investigation. The question is whether you want this to be public or private." The judge looked at each of them in turn, seeming to search for any sign of uncertainty. He found none. "I need to consult with my attorney," he said finally. "Of course," Wilson nodded. "You have 24 hours to decide. After that, we proceed officially." As they turned to leave, Judge Harmon called out, "Ms. Johnson." Maya paused at the door. I'm not. I don't. He struggled to find the words. I treat everyone the same in my courtroom. Maya looked at him for a long moment. The data says otherwise, Your Honor. And data doesn't lie. The next morning, Maya arrived at her office to find a stack of files waiting on her desk. Her assistant, Tom, greeted her with a cup of coffee and a nervous smile. These came in overnight, he explained. After word got out about the Judge Harmon investigation, people started coming forward. Lots of people. Maya sat down and opened the first file. It contained a handwritten statement from a young black woman who had appeared before Judge Harmon 6 months ago for a minor trespassing charge. The judge had fined her $1,000 despite it being her first offense. The second file told a similar story, so did the third. How many of these do we have? Maya asked, feeling a mixture of vindication and sadness. 27 so far, Tom replied, and the phone hasn't stopped ringing. Maya spent the morning reviewing the statements. The pattern was clear and disturbing. People of color consistently received harsher penalties, ruder treatment, and less patience from Judge Harmon. By noon, she had compiled enough evidence to support a formal complaint to the Judicial Conduct Committee. Her phone rang. It was District Attorney Wilson. Judge Harmon's attorney just called, he said without preamble. They want to meet. Already? I thought we gave him 24 hours. Apparently, he doesn't need that long. They want to discuss terms. Maya felt a surge of satisfaction. Where and when? Conference Room B, 1 hour from now. I'll be there. Maya used the hour to prepare. She organized her evidence, reviewed the relevant ethical guidelines for judges, and steeled herself for what would likely be a tense negotiation. When she entered Conference Room B, Judge Harmon was already seated with an older man in an expensive suit, clearly his attorney. District Attorney Wilson sat across from them with one of the FBI agents from yesterday. Ms. Johnson, the attorney stood and extended his hand. Lawrence Bennett, I represent Judge Harmon. Maya shook his hand firmly. Assistant U.S. Attorney Maya Johnson. Judge Harmon didn't look up. His face showed the strain of a sleepless night. Let's get straight to the point. Bennett began once everyone was seated. My client acknowledges that there may have been some unconscious biases in his courtroom procedures. Unconscious, Maya repeated, her tone skeptical. Bennett cleared his throat. Judge Harmon is willing to take a temporary leave of absence and undergo bias training. In return, we ask that this matter be handled internally through the Judicial Conduct Committee rather than through a criminal investigation. Wilson looked at Maya, deferring to her judgment. She had become the de facto lead on this case. That's not sufficient, Maya said calmly. We now have statements from over 24 individuals detailing a clear pattern of discriminatory treatment. This goes well beyond unconscious bias. She placed a folder on the table and slid it toward Bennett. These are just some of the cases we've reviewed. The disparities are too significant to ignore. Bennett opened the folder and quickly scanned the first few pages. His expression grew more serious with each page he turned. Additionally, Maya continued, we've analyzed Judge Harmon's dismissal rates. White defendants were 4 times more likely to have their cases dismissed than black defendants with similar charges and backgrounds. Judge Harmon finally looked up, his face ashen. I had no idea the numbers were so clear. That's the problem with systemic racism, Your Honor, Maya replied, her voice level but firm. It creates patterns that become obvious when you actually look for them. Bennett leaned over to whisper something to his client. Judge Harmon nodded slowly. What are your terms? Bennett asked, his earlier confidence noticeably diminished. Maya glanced at Wilson, who nodded slightly. Judge Harmon will immediately resign from the bench, she stated. He will cooperate fully with our investigation into all cases where his bias may have caused harm, and he will make a public statement acknowledging his actions. That's career suicide, Bennett protested. It's accountability, Maya corrected him, and it's non-negotiable. The room fell silent as everyone waited for Judge Harmon's response. Judge Harmon stared at the folder of evidence laid out before him. His attorney, Bennett, leaned close and whispered urgently in his ear, but the judge seemed barely to hear him. The weight of his actions had finally sunk in. I need a moment, Judge Harmon said suddenly, his voice hoarse. Alone. Maya and Wilson exchanged glances but nodded. Everyone except the judge filed out of the conference room, leaving him alone with the evidence of his years of biased decisions. In the hallway, Bennett approached Maya with a strained smile. "This is quite aggressive, Ms. Johnson. My client has a distinguished career spanning almost 2 decades. Surely we can find a more moderate solution." Maya's expression remained firm. "Mr. Bennett, I spent the past 24 hours reading statements from people whose lives were changed by your client's distinguished career. People who lost jobs because they couldn't pay excessive fines. People who had their children taken away because of harsh probation terms. This isn't about one traffic ticket or one bad day in court." Bennett's smile faded. "You realize this will be devastating for him." "I'm more concerned about the hundreds of people who have already been devastated by his actions," Maya replied calmly. After 15 minutes, the door to the conference room opened. Judge Harmon stood there, his shoulders slumped but his chin raised. "I'll resign," he said simply. Bennett looked shocked. "Richard, we should discuss this further." "No," the judge cut him off. "I've reviewed enough of these cases to see the pattern." He turned to Maya. "I never thought of myself as racist. I still don't. But these numbers," he gestured toward the folder, "they tell a story I can't ignore." Maya nodded, keeping her expression professional despite the surge of vindication she felt, and the public statement. Judge Harmon hesitated, then nodded. "I'll make it, but I want to write it myself." "Fair enough," Wilson said. "We'll need to review it before release." "Of course," the judge agreed. As they worked out the details of the agreement, Maya observed Judge Harmon closely. There was no anger in his face now, just a weary acceptance. She wondered if he truly understood the impact of his actions or if he was simply trying to save what remained of his reputation. By late afternoon, the agreement was finalized. Judge Harmon would submit his resignation effective immediately. He would issue a public statement acknowledging the pattern of bias in his courtroom, and he would cooperate with a review of cases where his decisions may have caused undue harm. As they prepared to leave, Judge Harmon approached Maya. "Ms. Johnson," he said quietly, "may I speak with you privately for a moment?" Maya hesitated, then nodded. Wilson gave her a concerned look but stepped away, remaining within sight but out of earshot. "I wanted to apologize to you personally," Judge Harmon said, "not just for the traffic fine, but for what I said, for how I treated you." Maya studied his face. "Thank you for that, but I'm not the one who was hurt the most by your actions." "I know," he admitted, "but you're the one standing in front of me now, and you're the one who finally made me see what I've been doing all these years." Maya considered his words carefully before responding. "Apologies are important, Judge Harmon, but they're just the beginning. What matters now is what you do next." He nodded slowly. "I understand." As Maya walked away, she felt a complex mix of emotions. There was satisfaction in seeing justice served, but also a deep sadness that it had taken this long and affected so many people. Her phone buzzed with a text from Wilson. "Press conference tomorrow at 9 a.m. You should be the one to make the announcement." Maya took a deep breath. The hardest part was over, but the real work of fixing the system was just beginning. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters and cameras the next morning. The news of Judge Harmon's sudden resignation had spread quickly, sparking intense public interest. Maya stood behind the podium, her posture perfect despite her nervousness. This was the largest press conference she had ever addressed. District Attorney Wilson introduced her with a brief statement. Assistant United States Attorney Maya Johnson will now provide details about the investigation that led to Judge Richard Harmon's resignation. Maya stepped forward to the microphone. Camera flashes lit up her face as she placed her prepared remarks on the podium. But when she looked up at the crowd, she set the paper aside. This moment called for something more personal. 3 days ago, I appeared in Judge Richard Harmon's courtroom as an ordinary citizen contesting a traffic ticket, she began. I was treated with disrespect and faced a fine that was significantly higher than what others received for the same offense. What Judge Harmon didn't know was that I am a federal prosecutor who specializes in civil rights cases. The reporters leaned forward, sensing this was not the usual dry legal announcement. But this story isn't about me, Maya continued. It's about the hundreds of people who faced similar or worse treatment in that courtroom over the years, but didn't have the legal knowledge or resources to fight back. People whose lives were changed by excessive fines, harsh probation terms, and biased rulings. She held up a thick folder. Our investigation revealed a clear pattern of racial disparities in Judge Harmon's courtroom. Black defendants received fines that were 40% higher on average than white defendants for the same offenses. Cases involving white defendants were 4 times more likely to be dismissed. A murmur spread through the crowd. Maya waited for it to quiet before continuing. Judge Harmon has submitted his resignation and acknowledged this pattern of bias. But his resignation alone is not enough. Today, I'm announcing 3 important steps toward real change. She held up one finger. First, we will review all cases from Judge Harmon's court where bias may have affected the outcome. Where appropriate, we will work to overturn unjust rulings and provide relief to those who were unfairly treated. A second finger joined the first. Second, we are establishing a court monitoring program that will collect and analyze data from all county and federal courts to identify potential patterns of bias before they become systemic. She raised a third finger. Finally, we are implementing mandatory bias training for all judges, prosecutors, and court staff in this district. This training will be ongoing, not a one-time event. The reporters began shouting questions, but Maya raised her hand for silence. Before I take questions, I want to speak directly to anyone who has faced unfair treatment in our courts. Your experiences matter. Your stories matter. And from today forward, we are committed to listening. For the next 20 minutes, Maya answered questions with calm authority. When asked if she felt vindicated by Judge Harmon's downfall, she shook her head. This isn't about vindication. It's about accountability and change. One judge's resignation won't fix a broken system. That takes ongoing commitment from all of us. As the press conference ended, Maya noticed a familiar face in the crowd. Margaret, the court observer who had first spoken to her after her traffic court appearance. The older woman gave her a thumbs up and a wide smile. Back in her office later that day, Maya found a small package on her desk. Inside was a framed quote from Martin Luther King Jr. "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." A note with it read, "Sometimes it needs a little help with the bending. Thank you for being that help, Margaret." Maya smiled as she placed the frame on her desk, a reminder that one person could indeed make a difference. The system wouldn't change overnight, but today was a significant step forward, and she was just getting started.